play is based on true events that happened during the second performance of the April 27, 2014 Chalice Players presentation entitled The Ocean, Cradle of Living and Dying, which explored the topic of death and dying. For those of you who were present at the time, you know there was an audience member who appeared a little off balance, and the police were called. Much ensued during this episode in the local UU lore, and it led to a deeper exploration, and perhaps even a personalization of the topic of mental illness for those of you who witnessed or were involved in it. This play is entitled Perspectives on Mental Illness, because depending on where you were sitting in the audience or the role you played on stage, your perspective can be wildly different. It is subtitled A Comedy of Fears, because many people, perhaps most, have a fear of those who are mentally ill. What drives this fear is open to interpretation. But Robin Blythe, a licensed clinical social worker in the Los Angeles area, has offered this. Stereotyping has led to mentally ill individuals being viewed as dangerous and unstable, when in reality, very, very few are in fact violent. And very little is actually known about mental health in our society, and what is often portrayed by the media is the negative and dangerous side. Some people in the sanctuary that day were afraid enough for their own personal safety and that of others to call 911 as events unfolded. Things ended peacefully. It was not a tragedy, but it awakened our leadership to what could have happened had the stranger been more than just a little off balance.
Am I missing something? Or is that man in the front row masturbating?
Well, people do have different reactions to death.
I normally attend the United Church of Christ in Ventura on Sundays. However, I was here today to support a friend of mine in the cast. I knew Unitarians were liberal, but this is ridiculous.
This guy's behaving really, really strangely. Something is very off. I'm responsible for all of the people in the sanctuary today. So I just announced that service is canceled? Well, the show must go on.
Oh my God. I think he has a gun.
Did you just say God and into the sanctuary?
Secure the classrooms, protect the children.
If the children involved in the Play-Doh and crayons, there's a man stripping naked in the parking lot in full view of the classroom windows. I think he may be nuts.
911 operator, what is the nature of your emergency?
There's a man in UU Sanctuary, and he's nuts.
I was told that I was right out of my head, the way he described it. He said I'd be better dead than alive. I didn't listen to his jive. I knew all along that he was all wrong, and I knew that he thought I was crazy, but I'm not. Oh no. My Atlas told me that I was right out of my head. He said I need treatment. He said I was the type that was most inclined, when out of his sight, to be out of my mind, and he thought I was nuts. No more ifs or ands or buts.
In the situation at the UU, the ability to label someone as different or nuts did cause some members to dial 911 for assistance. But as the congregation eventually realized, the situation turned out to be relatively benign.
Thank God. All he pulled out of his shorts was a tripod and a camera.
Did you just say God? And either you sanctuary?
Nuts. Nuts. How often people use that term to describe somebody who's experiencing mental health issues? Labeling someone can make the one doing the labeling more comfortable in dismissing a person they don't understand as different enough to be ignored, to be treated as less than equal. Isabel Novak, in her article, Why We Label, in the State Press of April 6, 2014, stated, I find this to be true in the sense that when we subconsciously label a person, we rid ourselves from the painstaking inconvenience of actually getting to know them. It takes the place of tangible communication. In a sense, it saves us the trouble of actually getting to know them.
Hi! In today's program, let us get to know one of my all-time favorite comedians, actually a hero of mine, Jonathan Winters, who's had a stellar career spanning decades, releasing an album every decade for 50 years. He was in hundreds of television shows and films. One of his most notable characters was Murph in Mork and Mindy. As much as this zany man made us laugh throughout the decades, many of his fans had no idea he was diagnosed with manic depression or bipolar disorder back in the early 1960s. Jonathan, can you tell the audience a little about what happened? What prompted you to become institutionalized?
Actually, it was earlier than the 1960s. I spent 8 months in a private mental hospital for a nervous breakdown back in 1959 and again in 1961. I was in my early 30s. I was performing on stage at the Hungry Eye in San Francisco when I had a nervous breakdown. I guess you could call it that. When the police came, I identified myself as John Q from outer space. Well, I was arrested, and it was then that I decided to commit myself to a mental hospital. Some people thought at the time that I was a literal madman, an uncontrolled force of nature who was actually channeling alien transmissions when I was on stage. It would be years before I was officially diagnosed as suffering from manic depression or bipolar disorder.
What happened in the hospital?
Well, at that time, they didn't have a label for me. And I said, what the devil? I know I'm not a schizophrenic. I'm not catatonic. So I asked for a diagnosis. And I remember so well what the doctor said. He said, it will only upset you. I replied, I'll tell you what's upsetting. It's the cost of this place. Now it is known that my diagnosis was bipolar disorder or manic depression. But there were no effective medications for it back then. I declined electroshock treatment because when I was told that it would not only erase the pain I was feeling, but it would also erase the memories. And frankly, I need that pain. I need those memories to be able to lead my creative life. I even joked with my doctor about keeping in touch with the demolition experts that I served with in World War II.
I have contact with them, I said solemnly.
The doctor puzzled and said, well, what's the story?
They would visit you again, I said solemnly.
They would visit me? puzzled? Then I'd throw in the kicker. Yeah, but then there would be only the one visit. It could have been that kind of joke that would have kept me there for a long time. The head doctor actually told me, you can get out of here anytime, all you need is 57 keys. So I was finally able to leave after being there 8 months.
How did the Hollywood machine react to this institutionalization? Was there any blowback? How about the public perception? This was 1959 and the 1960s, after all.
Back in the day, as long as it didn't result in public scandals, Hollywood was very forgiving in rewarding the talents of alcoholics, homosexuals, pill poppers, needle pushers, or those who were disdained or otherwise discriminated against at the time. Stars who flagrantly abused their celebrity status were rewarded as long as the adoring public didn't know about their weakness. They would put these stars in picture after picture, and it really frustrated me. I thought, why should I have to go on auditioning every time and proving that I was sane? I finally decided to publicly acknowledge my mental illness and just let the chips fall where they might. I used my breakdown in my comedy. In fact, in my next album, I said, I left the mothership and they caught me. That was a terrible thing, being in an institution. But, you know, I had fun playing checkers all day, making rope-soled shoes and Christmas ornaments. It was kind of crazy just being there for a long time. I think, looking back, the public was okay with it. They kind of expecting ever crazier things from me.
That's a common concern for performers that go into therapy or other treatment, and other performers that give up on drugs or alcohol. They worry. If I don't have that pain, where do I draw my creativity from? Can you comment on that, Jonathan?
Well, Jack Parr, an early television talk show host, once said of me, if you were to ask me the 25 funniest people I've ever known, I'd say Jonathan Winters, pound for pound, the funniest man alive. You know, these voices are always screaming to get out. They follow me around pretty much day and night. I was able to use this to my advantage in voiceover roles, and I came to admire the work of Groucho Marx, Laurel and Hardy. I'd say I've done for the most part what I intended: comedy, writing, painting. I guess I've had a ball. And as I get older, I just become an older kid.
I once told Playboy magazine why Jonathan Winters inspired me. He was like seeing a guy behind a mask. And you could tell that his characters were a great way for him to talk about really painful stuff. I learned later, these were people he knows. His mother, his aunt. He's an artist who also paints with words. He paints the people that he sees. As I reflect on this, I realize that when someone is outwardly funny and successful, people are more forgiving of the mental illness that drives these folks. They use the word eccentric to describe them, not nuts, as they would use to describe someone less successful. I know. I was someone many of you would have loved to get to know. Throughout my 63-year life, I was often described as charming, funny, witty, smart, because of my great personal success. I was not one to be labeled as nuts. Yet in an interview with Terry Gross on NPR's Fresh Air, sometimes I feel sad. In life, they called me Robin Williams.
They say, as a child I appeared a little bit wild with all my crazy ideas. But I knew what was happening, I knew I wasn't genius. What's so strange when you know that you're a wizard at 3? I knew that this was meant to be.
Nuts. The very label that makes the labeler more comfortable creates discomfort and stigma for the person being labeled. In her article, What If People Treated Physical Illnesses Like Mental Illnesses?, Lindsay Holmes wrote in the Huffington Post of November 14, 2014, "It's no secret that there's a serious stigma attached to mental illness. According to the CDC, only 25% of people with mental illness feel that other people are compassionate and sympathetic toward them. Yet, 1 in 4 people have been touched by some form of mental illness." Ironic, isn't it? Experts say that part of the problem when it comes to criticizing someone's mental health is a lack of empathy, as well as knowledge about the ailments. Yet despite the staggering evidence and rhetoric aimed at helping people understand that being diagnosed with a mental illness is not something that's in their control, just like having the flu, or food poisoning, or cancer isn't something that's in their control. Robot Hugs created a comic that displays what it would be like if we treated physical illnesses the way we treat mental. I get that you have food poisoning and all, but you'd have to at least make an effort. You just need to change your frame of mind, then you'll feel better. Have you tried, not having the flu? I don't think it's healthy that you have to take medication every day just to feel normal. Don't you worry that it's changing you from who you really are? It's like you're not even trying. Well, lying in bed obviously isn't helping you. You need to try something else.
I'm afraid to tell anyone I have these voices in my head, talking to me all the time. It's all very real to me, but I have to go to the mall today. I'll just put my hat on to keep my thoughts in and hopefully keep the voices out.
Judy, it's good to see you. Why, you haven't been out and about for weeks.
Why is she so interested in what you're doing? Don't answer her. Don't give her any information.
I've just been doing some work around the house.
Don't tell her about our psychic fights with the evil ones. Average people won't understand our fear of war.
Really? What have you been doing? I haven't noticed any contractors around.
Why is this person so interested in you? Is she a spy sent by the others to try to find out about your psychic work?
It's just work I've been doing myself, painting the walls and baseboards.
You fool! Quit talking to this nosy neighbor. She can't possibly understand how important your real work is.
Oh, that's just great. How are the kids doing? Is Jason still playing soccer?
Jason, yes, still playing soccer.
Be careful talking to this person. She may tell the others you are ill. Then you can't continue your special work. People just aren't enlightened enough to understand all that you do.
Well, it would really be good if we could get together. How about you and the kids come over for a barbecue this weekend? What do you say?
Get away now, go!
Sure, maybe. I have to check the schedule. I have to go.
Hey, Jody is really acting strange. I wonder what's wrong with her. I'm going to have to tell the other neighbors about her strange behavior and the fact that she's become so antisocial. I have a feeling they're not going to want to socialize with her anymore.
They all laughed at Eddie Graham Bell. They all laughed at Edison and also at Einstein. So why should I feel sorry if they just couldn't understand the idiomatic logic that went on in my head? I had a brain that was insane. Oh, they used to laugh at me when I refused to ride on all those double-decker buses, all because there was no driver on the top. What? No driver on the top? Man, that chick's twisted. Crazy. Boogie shiggy. Idiot Flip City. My analyst told me that I was right out of my head, but I said, dear doctor, I think that it's you instead, because I have got a thing that's unique and new to prove that I'll have the last laugh on you covered instead of one head. I got two.
I'm getting help now. I'm very afraid to tell anyone I have psychosis.
Jody, how does it feel to talk to someone now that you know you have psychosis?
I'm worried about what people would say if they found out I had mental illness. It's hard because no one talks about these sorts of things. People ask me how I am. I just say I'm fine. I suppose it's my own fault for not being more open in the first place, but I have been advised not to talk about it.
Will you get better? Ever?
I've been told I'll live with my illness for the rest of my life. So there's my dilemma. I want to be an example to others that you can recover, or at least learn to cope. But I don't want to reveal to others my diagnosis. I wonder if more people knew I'd been diagnosed with psychosis, yet live a normal life with a job and a relationship. If more people could learn tolerance and compassion and help to remove some of the stigma and discrimination that such a diagnosis brings.
The stigma of the label can exacerbate feelings of isolation and be used as an excuse for discrimination. Now, let's listen to the words of Diana, yet another person suffering from serious mental illness. From a young age, Diana went from one psychiatrist to another, was given conflicting diagnoses, and became increasingly more frustrated and depressed. Over the years, she's been alternatively diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, and dissociative disorder. And receiving the correct diagnosis, as we well know, is critical for successful treatment.
I've had mental health problems for most of my life. Self-harm was a normal part of my life when young. I attempted suicide several times. Just wanted it all to end.
Diana, were you able to get help?
I did not find much help or support, even from professionals who told me I must be mad and nuts to want to hurt myself. So judgmental. Even telling me personality disorders are not real mental health problems. One even telling me I was lazy for not challenging my negative thoughts. I kept trying to live the normal life I wanted so much for myself. I was studying at university and I was making progress, but sometimes I just couldn't make it to class. I tried to explain myself, but people couldn't understand, and I was met with discrimination. I tried to find help. There was not much support or understanding, much less a diagnosis. I finally dropped out of school and gave up on my dreams.
What happened then?
Finally, I found professionals who were able to give me a diagnosis. I'm now receiving support, regular appointments with mental health services, and therapy.
Has the diagnosis changed things for you?
Diagnosis was a positive step for me. It explained a lot of my symptoms and struggles, but it also presented me with a lot of stigma and discrimination, adding more pressure to everything I was already coping with. These experiences made it very difficult to talk about my problems, and as a result, I kept a lot to myself and suffered in silence.
What are you doing now?
Now, I'm studying part-time to become a social worker. My lecturers and friends that I've made are so understanding. I receive special support for my struggles and feel that I'm able to talk freely about my mental health issues, and I'm being helped so much to achieve my goals.
Are you better now?
This is still very difficult to live with. Strong mood swings, from extreme highs to severe lows that can last for weeks. Strong thoughts and urges to harm myself, and severe lapses of memory and awareness, and sometimes I mix up my dreams and reality. It's wrong. So many people out there are forced to suffer in silence because of stigma and discrimination.
I think the play went really well, don't you? Well, you were great. I flubbed a line, but I think it went pretty well.
Why is that cop coming into the UU sanctuary with a tripod and a camera?
I don't know.
What in God's name happened during our second performance?
Did you just say God in the sanctuary?
I stand corrected. What in the hell happened during our
Did you just say hell in the sanctuary?
As UUs, we strive constantly to be compassionate people. We're thus compelled to extend this compassion to those challenged with mental health issues. This includes eliminating the labels that might make us more comfortable, but add to the stigma, the pain, the isolation, and the discrimination of those being made labeled. We need to share our perspectives with each other, explore our fears of those with mental illness, even sharing our personal stories about dealing with mental health issues. Because statistics seem to indicate that we have all encountered someone with an issue, or have issues ourselves. In the case of our situation with our out-of-balance stranger, we were fortunate enough to have a UU leader brave enough to address the stranger in our midst, classroom teachers to protect our children, and a police response that kept our sanctuary safe, our stranger clothed in front of our children, allowed our onstage actors to remain oblivious, and to allow the show to go on.
Education is a good step toward overcoming fears and growing our compassion. As UUs, we can become educated ourselves and encourage others in our community to become educated as well. To further this education and grow our compassion, the UU is offering a free certification program, Mental Health First Aid, in conjunction with the National Council for Behavioral Health Care. All here can register for this training, and there is more information in the lobby which you can pick up on the way out. People who take this training and find it helpful can help encourage others to take it as well. As UUs, we can support the expansion of this education so that someday mental health first aid certification will be as common as CPR training is in our communities.
As in the real case of Jonathan Winters, and in our own congregation just a year ago, in the shooting incident at UC Santa Barbara. The first people that are contacted when someone's acting a little strange are the police.
In the publication's Center for Problem-Oriented Policing, Gary Cordner stated, "A number of the problems caused by or associated with people with mental illness often do become police problems. These include crimes, suicides, disorder, and other calls for service. Moreover, the traditional police response to people with mental illness has often been ineffective and at times tragic. UUs can support and campaign for training programs for our local police, ones who are usually first responders in mental health emergencies, so that tragic results are less common. And finally, we can be mindful when we're approached by someone, a friend, a coworker, a fellow UU, who is caring for or living with someone with mental illness, and listen, really listen, with an open, non-judgmental mind and a compassionate heart. Just being able to talk can help alleviate the stress and anxiety of being in the caretaking role. Can create.
Operator, what is the nature of your emergency?
There is a man in the UU sanctuary, and he's nuts!
Did you just say nuts in your sanctuary?
Because I have nothing that's unique and new to prove it. I'll have some the last laugh on you, 'cause instead of one head I got two, and you know 2 heads are better than one.
How about that?
We are the Caneo Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Our mission is to nurture spiritually courageous people who transform the world through justice and compassion. Like us on Facebook, check out our website at CVUUF.org, or come visit us. See you soon!